Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Tending Lilith's Fire with your hosts. I'm Kohenet Matan, and I'm here with Kohenet Grenn. This is episode 21, and today we are talking about play and infinite possibilities, and this energy that we imagine is going to carry us through into and through the coming year, 2022.
Indeed. And you raised the question, which we're going to start with, of what would we feel permission to do if we could do no wrong? If we weren't worried about doing it right by someone else's, usually somebody else's definition, or worried about being perfect, which we think we are socialized to worry about as women and as girls.
Yeah. Yes, I feel like this is a big question. And right, what would we do? I want to repeat, what would we do if we felt like we could do no wrong?
Mm-hmm.
That. So we pose this question to you first. So I mean, it's going to be second because we're speaking it, but we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Mm-hmm. And a secondary question to that Devorah brought up is, what would you do if, how did you phrase it? If money
weren't an issue, if you were planning a project or the next thing you want to do with your life or a new career, what would you do if money weren't a problem, if you had unlimited funds?
So it makes me want to name some of the limitations, right? Like, mm-hmm. For me, there's the need to be good and the need to be right. Mm-hmm. And that comes up a lot in the ways I feel pressure to show up in my work in the world. Like, I want to be a good social justice warrior, and I want to be a good facilitator, and I want to be a good caregiver of others, in a good service provider, and then at home, a good mother, and for many of us, a good partner, and like good, right? There's that word over and over, a good this, a good that. And also we feel this need to be right in what we say, and in our choices. Like, what if I made the wrong choice? Like, there's a lot of fear about that. Oh no, then I'm a fool, or then I'm bad, or then I'm wrong.
Right.
And so
it keeps us from taking risks.
Yes. It keeps us from taking risks, and it's entirely conditioned.
Exactly. What is socially acceptable, right or wrong, is very different. We were discussing if you're born a boy or born a girl.
Yes, that has been my experience. And I have brothers and sisters. And I was saying before we started recording that in my family, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like the girls were raised that we could do no right, and the boys were raised that they could do no wrong. And I feel like it's just in my perception of my family, it feels like the extremes of patriarchal conditioning that I can like see evidence of as I think about my childhood and family dynamics. And so I offer that also to say, like, what if we all could believe that we could do no wrong? Then what could we do? What would be available to us or possible for us if we peel back all those layers we just named of restriction and judgment, and allowed that risk and adventure and this idea of infinite possibility exists for us. And then what happens to the capacity of our imaginations when we lift those restrictions and say, like, whatever you imagine is possible.
Right. And what happens also, I think, out of these restrictions is that we develop such a fear of failure that, again, we stop taking risks. It silences us. I remember in corporate life being silenced in meetings, self-silenced, because I was afraid of making a mistake. Whereas a lot of the men at the table had no such fear.
Or looking foolish,
right.
Or being told that you're wrong.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think there's the same level of shame around it. I mean, I'm sure for some men there would be, but of saying the wrong thing or saying it at the wrong time.
Right.
I think what partly cured me of that was saying the exactly right thing and having somebody basically pat me on the head, not literally, figuratively, and saying, there, don't get so upset in a situation.
Yeah.
Which was very appropriate for me to show anger about a work situation.
Right. Yeah. So we learn, like, oh, in that moment, what happened was exactly what should happen, but the system still treated me like I was wrong.
Right.
Right? Like I could still do no right even when I was doing exactly the right thing. And so
Exactly.
many of us have had that experience either in childhood or in work in corporate life or any of these conditioned spaces. And so like what if we could wave a magic wand and like peel back those, it's like the glass ceiling kind of thing. Like what if we could just remove it, the walls, like that feeling of being hemmed in, if it was gone and we had all the space to do all the things. And I like to imagine, I've been thinking about this a lot this week, and I pulled some cards this week, and one of the cards, the culminating card in the reading, was the boy from the Heart of Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud, and his wife Wendy Froud, actually.
Right.
And this was sort of a Peter Pan energy. It was like, and so it makes me think about like little boys on the playground, or in movies, these like coming of age stories of boys who just felt fearless. At least there's a lot of that, not all of it, but there's an archetype about the boy that I think for me resonates as an aspect of the divine masculine, with that sense of confidence and infinite possibility and adventure, and play and experimentation, all without fear. And this also is very much in line with the season we're in astrologically. This is a very Sagittarius energy, masculine fire sign, all about adventure, experimentation, tasting, trying everything, and play. So what I in fact, like I want to even invite us, Devora, to turn the questions on ourselves, and answer, if we can, like what are some ways we might live our own lives differently if we could embody those aspects.
How would you live your life differently?
I mean, if I feel like I have some like legit logistical restrictions, but I would probably move. I would want to live in a more I want a more intentional community. I live in an apartment building right now where there are a small group of neighbors who I'm friends with and know, but I want to live in a place where people are looking out for each other in a much more intentional way, and where I'm spending more time in proximity to people that I care about, and where the cost of living is lower. Like even if money weren't an issue, I wouldn't choose to live this way. And I'll acknowledge also, like in along the lines of like being afraid to get it wrong, I chose to live here. I loved this apartment when I found it with my ex-husband, and I love it now. It's served me well, and I've come to really, really appreciate this space. And I know that I want something different than this ultimately. I want, co-housing, probably, intentional community, multi-generational living, and what else? Like I would team up with other families to homeschool our kids together, rather than have my kid in the system that exists now. Those are some things. I feel like I'm not even imagining big enough, but those are things I think about a lot.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, for me, it's interesting because we have this commonality of wanting to create community. Mine at the moment, for a number of reasons, COVID not being the least of them, is a virtual one. And expanding that community. And I am planning to take several leaps of faith and do that in the new year. Expanding ways that we can connect online as we do now for Lilith Institute classes and programs, but to make it even more accessible and to find resources and funding to allow me to embrace more people in the community and make enough of a living for us to survive and meet our basic needs. Neither my partner nor I are have extravagant needs. I guess my biggest biggest desire would be to travel a lot, but I'm not going to do that now, probably not next year either.
Wait.
Yes.
We're doing the thing where we're catching ourselves in the limitations.
Yes.
When you say I'm not
What if we had no COVID?
Yeah. What if we had no
If there
COVID?
was no COVID, I would be going to a number of countries that I have a list in my head right now, and yes, I would be leaving in 2 weeks.
And what would be your number one? What's the number one place you'd want to go?
Spot.
Sfat in the north of Israel. And what do you
Yes.
want to do in Sfat?
A number of things, mostly related to my own personal
Ah,
spiritual practice. And I would return to Africa, and I would love to see Japan, and on and on.
I want to go to
Definitely
Ireland.
go back to France. Oh, Ireland's beautiful.
I want
Yeah.
to go. I've never been to the UK, and I want to do a like goddess site pilgrimage.
Mm.
Um,
There's an excellent one to Crete also.
oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
though we have lost Carol Christ of blessed memory, there is a young woman now who is Laura Shannon, who is leading those pilgrimages. So that's another one. I might even do that. Yeah, yeah, because it's very profound. Um, so yeah, no, this is good. And also, you talked about this divine masculine energy before, and I asked you in this instance, in this context, what did you mean? And you talked about the confidence and creative energy, maybe that boys are encouraged to have without censorship or restrictions.
Mhm.
And I think it's useful possibly to point that out, especially if we're comparing it with women's not just need to, but instruction to be perfect and ladylike. I recounted a story to you of when I was age 5 or 6 and sitting spread eagled with my each leg over an arm of a chair in the living room, and at age 5 or 6, and perfectly comfortable and living my life, reading whatever I was doing, and having the babysitter at the time shocked and immediately telling me to put my legs together because it wasn't ladylike.
Mhm.
All those kinds of shaming messages, even if, I think even if I didn't quite know why she was saying that, in my head, I knew there was some shame around it, that
Of
I did
course.
something wrong, deeply wrong. That was in her tone of voice, So all those things, and then the stark comparison with an expression that I hope we are getting rid of boys will be boys, which allows boys to think they have permission to do, as you said before, whatever they want, without regard for other people's responses. Often, I would hope that would be shifting. It would be shifting in a world of infinite possibility.
It is shifting. It's shifting now
It is
because we
shifting.
talk about it. And
Right. And
yeah, and
people are speaking
thankfully,
out about it. Yeah.
yeah. And in lots, not everywhere in the world yet, but in lots of
Right.
places, that kind of language is not acceptable.
That's true.
The language of boys will be boys.
Right.
Um, and yeah, just because you mentioned creativity, I want to say, like, what work would we want to do? What do we want to write? What do we
Mhm.
want to share? What art would we share? If we weren't worried about censorship, if we weren't
Right.
worried about what other people might think, like what works are in us pounding to get out, and we're like, it's not time yet, I'm not ready, it's not perfect,
Or it's
somebody
too
might not
painful.
like it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Who are we writing for? And I think it's so important that we do continue to write anyway. If we're never going to, just saying to ourselves, you don't have to share it. You just do it for yourself, because it's
Mhm.
very worthwhile practice and also very healing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say even do it for yourself, like if sharing it brings you joy
Right.
because it needs to come through you,
Right.
then and then whether or not anyone else reads it is secondary.
Relevant almost. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's true. Okay. I'm going to try to move
I
a
know
little
you're now
out of
the
the
light's
crowd.
getting
There
you.
we go. I want to just say I think writing can be very healing, and I want to bring folks' attention to the book Original Resistance, Reclaiming Lilith, Reclaiming Ourselves, from Girl God Books, which we'll be working with in the next Lilith Book Circle, which is starting January 16. And it's an anthology of poetry, art, short stories, which I'm sure for many women, myself included, was difficult to write, and yet very, very healing. Coming out the other side of being able to write something, as many of us did, has a strong impact and can shape this and the next generations.
Yeah, I
Take
got
the shame out of some of these topics. Yeah.
now you're mentioning the book, but you're not going to mention the circle.
Sorry. Yes, the circle starts January 16th with Yeye Louisa Tish, Dr. Vivian Monroe, and myself. It's a 9-week program where we're working with a study guide, which asks some very pointed questions about Lilith, the first woman before Eve, and um, about her character, about her relationship with Eve, but very down to earth, practical questions that are interesting to work with and peruse and talk about as we do in breakouts and write about a little bit. And the reading, I just want to say, because I know for some adult learners it can be onerous to have heavy homework. The reading is not at all onerous. It's very light, a few stories a week, and it's been very, I think, a very profound experience for the women in the circle. So yes, if that's of interest to you, please check out lilithinstitute.com.
I was in the circle.
Yes.
I participated in the last Lilith circle, and I'll say it was awesome. And I just saw the first glimmer of an announcement about it, I think yesterday, and I went, ooh, Louisa Tish and Devora and Vivian are doing a thing. And I was like, oh, it's the same thing I already did. Darn. I was like, could I do it again?
We may need an advanced.
Yeah.
Well, we enjoyed it so much that we planned the second one for January, which will go through March, 9 Sundays in a row at 3:00. Yeah, so I'm glad that it was meaningful for you, and I think definitely a part 2 could be developed, not just a second circle, but a part 2 for those who were in the first circle. But we haven't got there yet.
No, yeah. So stay tuned. First of all, if you
Yes.
have been thinking about exploring Lilith, if you've been coming and tuning into our show, maybe you're like, who is this Lilith character? I want to know more. This book, Original Resistance, it's all about Lilith through lots of different perspectives. As Deborah mentioned, there's art and writing. And then in the class, in the circle, you get to read the stories, be supported in your exploration of the stories. And I think like really deepen a relationship with Lilith and the Lilith in us. Right. I think that's a key piece of what comes out of that experience, is connecting with like what resonates with us in each of these pieces that we're reading, and the different questions about her, and how they're relevant to us, to feminism, to our challenging of patriarchy.
How she can, as an archetype, as a mythological figure, help us all find voice.
Yes.
Sometimes that voice that's screaming to get out inside of us, or that sense of independence, or the things we've been talking about, the worry about censorship or doing the right thing, or flying free, which she did, flew to leave what was supposed to be paradise, which was actually for her prison, in order to have her freedom. So it addresses those questions deeply within us, yes, as well as the study of her.
And when you say that, I'm like, right, Lilith embodied it wasn't easy for her, I don't think, but she embodied these things that we're talking about. Right. She said, screw it, I'm out. I don't care what the consequences are. It's not worth it to stay in this situation. Right. And, even though I'm the one who brought up, like, this feels like a divine masculine energy, I think the binary, we know nowadays, the binary is a false binary. There's none of these attributes are innately masculine or feminine. Right. And I love Lilith as a model of, a character who was a woman who did what we say comes easily to the divine masculine, which is to say, fuck it, I'm out. Right. I'm going to do what I want to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so she's a great example of how the binary is false, and women also, we do have the freedom to choose. And even when there are consequences, we've talked about this before, that in Lilith's story, in the telling of her story, I think that the consequences are emphasized, the negative consequences are emphasized in order to keep women from making the same choice she did.
Absolutely. Both she and Eve are demonized for being curious, for taking on, for making their own decisions, basically. And I think that's another false duality. I mean, you might call it also a false binary. And that is the opposition, where we keep trying to pit one against the other. Why is one the good girl, one the bad girl? Well, no, because even if Eve for a little while was considered more submissive and so the good girl, once she made her own choice, she is blamed with responsibility for pain in menstruation, pain in pregnancy, in childbirth,
Childbirth.
and for humankind being thrown out, being thrown out of Eden and therefore no longer immortal. So it's really whatever you were saying earlier, whatever I think off camera too, whatever choice we made, it's a no win.
Yes.
It's a no win.
Yes.
It's like the Madonna whore complex, the
Yes.
double standard where a woman is slut shamed for the same behavior that a man is applauded for. All of that.
But let's look at, so the same behavior that a man is applauded for. And let's flip the script and say both of these women exercised free will at key moments. Right. And so let's say, like, good for them. They both made choices and said, screw the consequences. This is the right thing for me right now. For Lilith, it was to say to Adam, nope, I'm not here for this. And for Eve, it was, God gave me this thing, I'm going to taste it. And maybe, and I believe that was an important turning point. And the exercising of free will was an evolution for, I'll say, humanity, if we believe that, and this is like the myth of a birth of humanity, that moving out of the garden was supposed to happen. It was a birth. And Eve's exercising her free will was the beginning of humans having free will. And both of those moments of, like, this, for Lilith, it was a response, I think, against, like, she was responding to Adam's behavior. And Eve, she had a moment to herself where, there's, like, the midrash, there's the story about how the serpent convinced her, like, she couldn't possibly have made this choice for herself by herself. I reject that.
And Adam couldn't possibly have said no. The thing that Annie's referring to in terms of the relationship with Adam, in case it hasn't been clear, is the fact that he wanted to dominate Lilith in every possible way sexually, by staying on top always, and we assume trying to dominate her as Cosi Fabian of blessed memory also, as she pointed out. Presumably he tried to dominate her in every other way as well. Yeah, so that's what she had enough of before she flew out of the
I assume, because we're at episode 21, that because we do name these things, so the reason I don't go into it every time is that I'm like, maybe you haven't seen those episodes before, so I guess we should explain, but go back and watch them. So, like, these two that are often, the way that Eve's story especially gets told over time later, it's like she's helpless, at the mercy of Adam and God, and then at the mercy of the serpent. And I don't think that's true. And I love, if you're looking for good writing about Eve that, like, reframes her, go check out Ronna Detrick's work. She's got a TED Talk and a lot of work about looking at the female characters in biblical writing through a feminist lens. But no, I mean, Eve was as much of a powerful figure in her act of rebellion as Lilith was. And so I want to come back to our question, like, what if we could do no wrong and we could be such figures? And I feel like we really limited ourselves in our answers. So we're going to have to think about, I'm going to have to go away and think bigger, dream bigger, and come back. And come back to this question with lots more expansiveness.
I like that idea. Yeah.
We're not used to that.
It's true, and we can come back to explore that, and especially in the light of the themes we identified for today of play and infinite possibility.
Yes.
So yes, that and I see those really as being key for the new year, for 2022. So yeah, let's do that. Let's come back and ask ourselves that again. And again, we'd love to engage with you and any comments you have on that front, that score.
Yeah, we would like to hear your infinite possibilities. Help us, push us to dream bigger, please.
Yes.
Inspire us, be possibility models of big dreams. And I think that's what we need in 2022. That's what we need right now. The biggest dreams, the ideas that no one's thought of yet, the ideas that we've been holding, that we think nobody wants to hear this, or somebody else has already said this, or somebody's not going to like me if I say this. These are the ideas that we need, that the world needs right now.
And
to
especially if they are part of your passion, you're doing yourself a disservice if you silence yourself in
mhm,
that way. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
any final thoughts,
I think
Devorah?
so. Seems a very exciting point to end on, and as we lead into a new beginning with a new year, we may be back once more before the new year. We're not sure, but if we don't see you again before that, yeah,
Then
just
happy
bring back.
solstice also.
Yes,
If we, because we won't have another episode before the solstice.
right.
But you can go and check out our work on Instagram and in other places because we may have other stuff. I know I plan to have some solstice stuff. We'll see if that happens. And also a lot of our Hanukkah stuff, like our last episode talked about the richness of the darkness, which I think is really in tune with solstice. And then Happy New Year as
And
we
Merry
enter
Christmas.
2022. And Merry Christmas, of course. Yes, Merry Christmas. Miracles and light and
Yes, and then
loving kindness.
Kwanzaa being another holiday of light as well,
Yeah.
and Diwali. So all
Well,
those things.
Diwali was
Oh, I know
already
it's over,
passed.
but I'm thinking about festivals of light, and there are so many. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, and I guess you'll see us next time.
all right.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.